It's Brunchin with Marinaro, Sunday edition, presented by Cherry River Hard Seltzer. Only 90 calories, natural flavors, no preservatives. Now available in Quebec grocery stores and at the beer store as well. Joining me right now from the Montreal Gazette and HockeyInsideOut.com. Good Sunday morning to you, Stu Cowan. How are you?
I'm doing well, Tony. A little chilly like everybody else, but good.
Man, is it cold, let me tell you. But things are going to heat up when the Montreal Canadiens finally hire a general manager, Stu. It looks like it's going to happen sometime this week. Marc de Journal de Montréal reports it could happen as early as tomorrow. Your thoughts on that?
I'd be surprised if it's tomorrow, only because the Canadiens are playing tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah.
And it would surprise me they'd have it. I mean, they would obviously have to have a Zoom conference early in the morning if that was the case. I think they'd do it on a day when they're not playing. So I think maybe later in the week is more likely. But it certainly seems like they're down to, from what reports are, down to their last three candidates with Matthew Darche, Daniel Briere, and Kent Hughes.
The next general manager is going to be general manager number what exactly? 25, overall, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head.
I think it's 25.
Yeah.
All right. And if it's 25, just do it on January 25th.
There you go.
Huh? Wouldn't that be okay? But anyway, look. Okay, so the names are those. They are the names of Matthew Darche, Daniel Briere, and Kent Hughes. Are you surprised?
No, I'm not. I've said on your show and I've written before that I thought Matthew Darche was the best candidate for the job. Daniel Briere's name has been out there right since the beginning. And Kent Hughes, I go back to that news conference when Jeff Gorton was first named, and 2 or 3 times he mentioned looking for a GM. He might look outside the box a bit and maybe look for a player agent. And right at that time, I started thinking, geez, I wonder which player agent he might be talking about. Him and Kent Hughes are close friends. They go back a long ways. And at this point, Tony, I'm wondering if Jeff Gorton wants to hire Kent Hughes, and maybe Jeff Molson's hesitant about hiring Kent Hughes because of the language factor. Kent Hughes, as far as I know, I haven't heard him speak French, but apparently his French is quite good.
Yeah.
But, he's a guy who's lived in Boston for the last 20 plus years. Lived more than half of his life in the United States, and he's not a Gus Chez Nous, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm starting to think right now that that's who Gorton wants, but I'm not sure if that's who he's going to get.
Okay, so I felt all along that if Jeff Gorton could have his way, and I've gone on record as saying this, and of course the Sick Podcast is proof of that, that if Jeff Gorton could have his way, the guy that he would hire would be Kent Hughes. I felt that all along. And if he couldn't have his way with Kent Hughes, the guy that he would hire would be Daniel Briere. And if Jeff Molson and Michael Landauer could have their way, and possibly even Bob Gainey, the guy they would hire is Matthew Darche. So I'm not surprised at all. Let's put things in perspective. Matthew Darche played for the Montreal Canadiens, so did Daniel Briere. They both played for the Montreal Canadiens when Jeff Molson was on the team. Matthew Darche played for the Hamilton Bulldogs, pardon me, when Michael Landauer was the owner. And so there's the connection there. Jeff Molson and Matthew Darche, I hear, are very close or close. They're friends. Daniel Briere worked with the Philadelphia Flyers or worked with the team that was an affiliate to the Rangers when Gorton was there. So there's a little bit of a connection there. And Kent Hughes is the strongest personal, even professional connection that Jeff Gorton has throughout the entire process. So I'm not surprised at all.
No, and, Jeff Gorton, for all intents and purposes, is a general manager, right? And so he's looking for somebody who maybe looks at things a little differently than he does, which would be a player agent. And as I said, the connection they have with each other. Kent Hughes, in the world of the salary cap, has a good idea of what players are worth, has experience negotiating contracts from the other side of the table, which is another thing he brings. And as you mentioned, I mean, Darche and Briere, I know Matthew Darche a little bit. I don't know Daniel Briere at all. I know Matthew Darche is a really smart guy. Darche and Briere both have business degrees from university. They're smart guys. They both have experience running teams. Darche the last 3 years under Julien Brisebois. And as you mentioned, Daniel Briere with the ECHL team.
Yeah.
And the number one job qualification for general manager of the Canadiens is the ability to speak French, and that's why also they're right at the top of the list.
Yeah, you're right about that. And if there's different ways it could go here, because the big thing in all this, I think right now everyone's saying, does Kent Hughes want to be the general manager? He represents, I think, anywhere between 15 to 17 players. You would think that he makes a salary that is higher than what he would be offered. And so I think that's the big question right now. Does Hughes want it? Because if he wants it, I think it's his. And what I think he would probably do is bring Philippe Lecavalier along with him. And then all of a sudden it gets more, how can I put it? It satisfies the Francophones more than it would if it would be Hughes by himself. So I could see that scenario playing out. I can also see a scenario where Hughes says no, and then all of a sudden it becomes Briere with Lecavalier maybe as well, and then you have that whole agent thing in there that he's looking for. And I wouldn't be surprised once again if it's Matthew Darche, because there's a strong connection to Molson and to Andlauer. But Matthew Darche is set to interview for the vacant GM job in Anaheim. And does he want that one more? I think he wants Montreal more. I can't put myself in his head, but would it be a bad thing if Matthew Darche would become either the next general manager of the Anaheim Ducks or gain more experience with Tampa Bay, and then not be the Canadiens GM this time around, but next time around? Wouldn't be a bad thing either.
No, and the thing I've wondered with Matthew Darche also, Tony, is that, as I mentioned before, with Jeff Gorton technically is the general manager, and I wonder how much say the new general manager will have under Jeff Gorton. And if Matthew Darche feels he already has more say in Tampa, working with his good friend Julien Brisebois, than he would have here, I thought that might be a reason why he might stay in Tampa. And now you bring up the Anaheim situation. There's reports that he's going to be interviewed this week for the Anaheim job. There, he would have maybe feel he'd have more of a say as a GM.
I don't know if he's going to get that job, though.
No, I don't know either. But
Martin Madden will interview as well, and I would imagine so will Marc Bergevin.
Yeah, I'm just saying from Matthew Darche's perspective.
Yeah,
maybe he thinks he'd have more of a say there. Less scrutiny on him and his family in Anaheim. You'd be able to go out for dinner with his wife, and nobody would know who he was.
Yeah.
Better weather. All this sort of factors in.
Oh, for sure.
The other thing you mentioned there is with Lecavalier, Phil Lecavalier, Vinny Lecavalier's brother. The first main client that Kent Hughes had was Vinny Lecavalier.
Of course.
And him and Kent Hughes and Phil Lecavalier have worked together for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And that's interesting you bring up that they might be a package deal. I don't know Kent Hughes at all. I know people who know him. One of those people is Torrey Mitchell, Torrey Mitchell's dad, Steve Mitchell, who I'm good friends with. And Kent Hughes was Torrey's agent throughout his whole career. Kent Hughes, a lot of his clients are Quebec clients. So he has roots in Quebec with that. And from just talking with Steve Mitchell, I mean, he had nothing but great things to say about Kent Hughes as far as the way he handled his son as a client throughout Torrey's career.
He's a pro.
And other people I know who know Kent Hughes about nothing but good things to say about him also. So I can see why he would be one of the three candidates, and I could see why Jeff Gorton would want him as a GM. Yeah,
and once again, if he doesn't come over, I don't be surprised if Philippe Lecavalier does and joins one of the two other candidates. All right, okay. Let's get to the questions. Sharing is sharing, of course, and so share this feed, share this Facebook Live, and we're live on Twitter as well, and we are live on YouTube. So once again, you can follow us, follow our Facebook page at The Sick Podcast, follow us on Twitter at The Sick Podcast, follow us on our YouTube page, and subscribe. It's absolutely for free. And of course, you can also follow us on our Instagram handle at The Sick Podcast. But when we go live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Nikolaus Soulelis. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Nicolas, my question, if Kent Hughes isn't sure he's interested in the job, why are we delaying the process for him? I think they're delaying the process for him because he's their guy.
Yeah,
Stu?
if his name's being mentioned now, he's interested. And as I mentioned before, I think he's the guy Gorton wants. And we'll see if, and I said the language factor comes into play here, I think a little bit. But he's the guy who wants it. And as someone I know and respect within NHL circles told me once, every player agent thinks he's a GM or can be a GM. So, Kent Hughes, from a financial standpoint, has probably made more money than he could ever spend in his lifetime. He has strong roots still in Montreal. His parents both still live on the West Island in Beaconsfield, I believe. His mother-in-law still lives in Montreal. So it would be a homecoming and away for him. As I said, he's lived away from Montreal for the last 20 plus years.
Would be nice.
So money isn't everything in life. I mean, this is how often does the opportunity come up? As you said, 25 general managers in the history of the Canadiens. This isn't a job that comes along every day. And if he is the guy to become the GM, and hopefully it would work out for him. But if it didn't, I mean, there's nothing to stop him from going back to his player agent business. He would obviously have other people run it while he was GM of the Canadiens. But it's he's at a stage in his life. His kids are growing up. His sons are at university in Boston, and maybe it's
Northeastern. They both play there. Yeah. His son Jack is going to go in the first round of the draft this year in 2022. His other son was drafted by Jeff Gorton when Gorton was the general manager of the New York Rangers. Not only drafted, but Gorton made a trade to get a pick, I believe, in the 7th round, if memory serves me well, and drafted him. So there have been some dealings there before. The two sides obviously know each other. All right.
Well, that just shows you how close they are.
Yeah.
And that he would make a trade in the 7th round to draft Kent Hughes' son.
Stu, the process isn't over yet. They haven't named their GM yet. But if they name Kent Hughes, with all due respect to the process, I think it was probably decided before it even happened. But it was a chance to interview a bunch of people to see where they're at with their career and if they could help the Montreal Canadiens, if not in the general manager's position, but in another position as well.
Yeah, and if it was a process, and I'm not certain it was, but Jeff Molson wouldn't be doing his job if he didn't interview as many people as possible.
100%.
Idea of what's out there, maybe get some ideas from them.
Yeah, that
you can pass along to the new GM. Like, this guy said maybe we should try this. What do you think about that? This guy said maybe we should try this. So you're picking for what any job, any business, whether it's hockey or whatever. When you're hiring a high level manager in your position, it would be foolish not to interview as many qualified candidates that you think are out there before making a final decision, even if going into those interviews, you sort of know in the back of your mind who you want.
Let's go back to the question, Stu, because I've been told we have a ton of them. Rick says, if you look at past decisions, is it me or the media was never able to know in advance the hire of the new GM? Is it possible that it will be somebody no one thought of? My advice, it'll be a big surprise, the choice of the next GM. No, it won't. No, it's going to be Hughes, it'll be Briere, or it'll be Darche. And that's it. And by the way, I told you it wasn't going to be Patrick Roy. Yeah. I guaranteed you it wasn't going to be Patrick Roy. And for all of you who said, hey, Marinaro, who are you? How do you know it's not going to be Patrick Roy? How did I know? Because I knew.
And you knew they were going to interview him, Tony, because they had to.
Yes.
They had to interview him, or else Patrick would be on the front page of the Journal de Montréal. They never even talked to me. That would be the headline,
Folks, he never had a chance. Believe me when I tell you that. More questions coming in. Let's go to Philippe Laurent. If language wasn't a criteria, would Darche and Briere still be the top candidates for the GM position? Stu?
I think Darche would still be a candidate because he's been director of player personnel for a team that won the last 2 Stanley Cups, working under who I think is the best general manager in the NHL today. Daniel Briere, probably not. That's a huge jump going from the ECHL to general manager of an NHL team.
All right, okay. More questions coming in. MJV. If Molson is stopping Gorton from hiring Hughes, then what's the point of Gorton being hired if Molson is going to step in and say no? I don't think Molson will stop Gorton of hiring whoever he wants. There's a process. There are people that are part of it. But in the end, Jeff Gordon has to be comfortable with the person that's going to be hired. I don't think it's that's delaying the process. I don't think the process has been delayed. I think it's going the way it should be going. I do believe that when they announce the hirings, they won't just announce the hiring of a general manager. They'll announce the hiring of a couple of candidates that can help in a couple of key positions. And by the way, I said before, and I maintain, I believe the new director of amateur scouting will be Daniel Doré. More questions coming up.
Yeah, Tony, just interrupt for 1 second. I also think the two women candidates, as I've written this before, I'd be surprised if one or not both of them are hired in some kind of hockey operations capacity.
I don't think Emily Castonguay will be hired. I don't think she wants it. Just a gut feel. Mm-hmm. I don't know that based on anything other than a gut feel of a young woman who's very dynamic, very determined, obviously with a law degree, extremely intelligent, went over to Momentum Hockey, I believe in 2014 or something like that, or 2016, is building something there, is building something really good. And unlike Kent Hughes, who has been in the game as an agent longer and is more established and has made more money, Emily Castonguay is building something. It's almost like her baby, and I think she's going to see it through for some time. My gut tells me Emily Castonguay will not be hired by the Montreal Canadiens, because I think if she was offered the job, my gut tells me that she would turn it down. Tim says, if Ducharme is let go at season's end, who do you feel should be the next coach of the Canadiens? Stu?
Depends on who the new GM is. If it's Kent Hughes, I wouldn't be shocked if it's Jimmy Montgomery. They have a long history together. They played college hockey on the same team. And if it's Matthew Darche, I think that McGill connection is going to kick in, and Guy Boucher, is and Matthew Darche have a long history together, a strong connection together. And there was a time not too long ago, you'll remember, Tony, that Guy Boucher was considered the Canadiens' coach in waiting.
Yes,
he was coaching the farm team the same way that Dominic Ducharme later filled that role. So I think if it's Matthew Darche, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Guy Boucher. And if it's Kent Hughes, I think Jimmy Montgomery's name would be out there.
All right. And look, there's another name. If it's Matthew Darche, it could be Benoit Groulx, who's the coach of the Syracuse Crunch. But I've said this before on the program, on the Sick Podcast, and I'm going to say it again. I believe that if Matthew Darche is the next general manager of the Canadiens, that he will hire Guy Boucher, who was his coach when he played for the Hamilton Bulldogs, and the two are very, very close. More questions coming in. Sharing is caring. Share this podcast. Share this video on social media. Denis Lucaris. Tony, that is the problem with the National Hockey League. They don't understand that hockey and other sports is entertainment. Imagine Roy as general manager and Tortorella as coach. That would be outstanding. Stu? You and I wouldn't complain if Roy was a GM and Tortorella was a coach. For sure we wouldn't. There would never be a shortage of things to talk about. But, folks, I knew it wasn't going to be Patrick Roy. And anyone who thought it was going to be Patrick Roy was being really naive. And that's it.
And Tortorella can't speak French, so he's never going to coach the Canadiens. And just to go back to Jimmy Montgomery, fluently bilingual. He grew up in the East End of Montreal, and I believe he was probably the only English kid on his hockey team most of the times when he was playing as a kid, and so he checks that box also. Yeah,
it's Marc Defoy, by the way, who has reported that Patrick Roy is out. Marc Defoy from the Journal de Montréal. And Stu, you and I have been around a long time. It was Marc Defoy who asked about Patrick Roy, who almost campaigned for Patrick Roy in the way he asked Jeff Gordon about Patrick Roy. Like, would we agree on that?
Well, in that news conference, Marc, I think, asked 2 or 3 questions about Patrick, and there was other 2 or 3 at least other questions about Patrick, which is why I was saying they had to at least interview him, even if there was no way they were going to hire him, because, as I said, it would have been all over. It would have been the front page news. The day they would have hired the GM, the front page story on the Journal would probably be Patrick Roy saying that, no, they never even talked to me.
It leads me to believe that those who asked about Patrick or / campaigned about Patrick are either very, very close to Patrick or very close to some of Patrick's people, right? That's
well, Guy Carbonneau, I know you had him on. He thinks Patrick's the guy also. And his
former teammate. There's loyalty there.
Yeah, there's loyalty there.
Right.
And these guys, and I just think Patrick's reputation, going back to the way he left the Canadiens, going back to the way he left the Colorado Avalanche, he doesn't play well with others when things don't go his way. He
makes things public for an organization that would like to keep things very close to the vest. That's not their style. He makes them public. The wires touch every now and then.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't like that Mario Tremblay was named head coach from day one.
Yeah.
And never hit it. He didn't like the way his buddy, he couldn't get along with his buddy Joe Sakic in Colorado.
Yeah.
And disagreements there led him to leave. So, him and Gorton aren't buddies. They don't know each other.
Yeah.
So if he couldn't get along with Joe Sakic, his former teammate, and figure there, how do you expect things to work out here with Jeff Gorton? And as I've written one of the columns, I mean, I think if Patrick Roy comes here as GM, he's got his eye on Jeff Gorton's job from day one.
You know what? There's no doubt in my mind, Stu. There's no doubt. And should there be a difference of opinion, and I've said this all along, should there have been a difference of opinion or two, and it would somehow, some way leak, who would get public opinion? Who would get, who would end up winning that battle in the media? It would be Patrick, because Patrick's un gars de chez nous, puis il a gagné 2 Coupes Stanley avec le Canadien, puis c'est le roi, puis c'est Saint-Patrick, puis c'est un gagnant. Puis Jeff Gorton, c'est un gars du Massachusetts. Il parle même pas français. Il a dit 5 ou 6 mots, puis that's it, là. Arrête, là.
Yeah.
That's
and I think,
story.
just to go back to the Kent Hughes thing, too.
Yeah.
Jeff Gorton doesn't understand how the language issue works in Quebec, right? He's not from here. He doesn't understand. Jeff Molson does.
Yes.
And that's why I'm wondering if Jeff Molson's wondering, going back to the Randy Cunningworth and other the language situations, I'm wondering if Jeff Molson is wondering how he just hired a unilingual American to be.
But hold on a second, Stu. Hold on a second. You remember when Jeff Molson wrote that statement? The statement that he was, relieving Marc Bergevin of his general manager duties, and the search was on for the next general manager. What did he say the next general manager would be? A bilingual GM.
Yeah.
He didn't say it would be a francophone.
Yep.
He didn't say it would be a French speaking.
Mm-hmm.
He said it would be a bilingual general manager.
Yep.
We have to keep that in mind. Let's go to the question.
Yeah, and again, just to go back, I mean, Kent Hughes played a year after he played for Lac St. Louis Lions midget AAA team, where he was the captain of the team, and he was a great hockey player too, Kent Hughes.
Yes.
Then he played a year at College Saint Laurent with Jimmy Montgomery as a teammate before he went down to the States. So he does speak French. I'm not sure after so many years living outside of Quebec how good it is, but and if it's not great, it would be probably very easy for him to brush up on it and get it back up to a better standard if that's but we'll see what happens.
I still don't think it would be popular among some of the fans.
No, I mean it's you have the unilingual Anglo-American and the Anglo-West Island Montreal boy who might speak French, but his name is still Kent Hughes, and I don't know how that. And I think that might be, as I said, I think Kent Hughes is the guy Jeff Gorton wants.
Yeah.
And I think if there's a holdup, I think that might be it. Just with Jeff Molson wondering how that will go over with not only the Canadiens fan base, but also people who like beer and buy Molson X or buy whatever beer they buy. Remember Randy Cunningworth. I mean, keep going back to that situation.
I hear you. Let's go to the questions. All right. Roy Shrewd, were you surprised, or Shroud, that on your podcast, Guy Carbonneau advocated continuation of the model of hiring Habs alumni for management positions with the Canadians? No, I'm not surprised. Once a Hab, always a Hab. They know what it means to wear that jersey. They believe it's important. Part of me believes that there's something to that. I don't buy the whole thing that Patrick Roy would want to win more than anyone else because he was here. Whoever's going to take the job wants to win the Stanley Cup. There's nobody that wants to win it more than somebody else. Everybody that takes a GM job in hockey, 100% of themselves wants to win the Stanley Cup. There's no one that wants to win it at 100%, and somebody that wants to win it at 130 because his name is Patrick Roy, puis gagnant, puis il a gagné 4 Coupes Stanley. That I don't buy. You also have to understand that, Stu, the alumni feel they were shut out by Marc Bergevin. You correct me if I'm wrong.
I was just going to say that. I mean, one of the big mistakes I think Marc Bergevin did was, for whatever reason, which is hard to understand, is shutting out the alumni, starting with Serge Savard, who recommended him for the job, and then Marc Bergevin basically shut the door on him. I mean, Serge Savard writes about it in his book and didn't want to hear anything Serge Savard had to say or any kind of advice, and he locked out. And a lot of the alumni, you know, some of these guys too, Tony, were not happy with the way they were treated by Marc Bergevin. And it makes no sense to me.
Stéphane Richer went on record. Stéphane Richer went on record as saying that when he was around, he felt like Marc Bergevin didn't like it.
Yeah, right? And I've heard other alumni guys say similar things. And should they only hire former Canadians for positions like that? No. Should they consider them? Yes, because guys like Guy Carbonneau and that, they have such a passion for this team. Watching L'Antichambre after some of the games, some of the former Habs players, Benoit Brunet, Vincent D'Anfou, seem more upset about what's happening on the ice than the guys who are actually on the ice. They still have that CH in their heart, and it's a big part of it. So is hiring those guys a bad idea? No, but that's not the only guys that should look at. But, the alumni room for the Canadians at the Bell Center is just not far from the Canadians' locker room. And the area outside where the players meet their wives and families after the game, it's sort of a mingling spot, and the alumni are there and the players are there. And to me, there's nothing wrong with having Guy Lafleur and Guy Carbonneau and Yvan Lambert and these guys around the current players on the Canadians, because these guys must be looking at, wow, that's Guy Lafleur, that's this guy. Even if they're just talking with each other and just getting, these guys can pass along the passion that they have for the Canadians to some of these younger guys who don't remember what it was like when the Canadians were good, right? If younger players.
You're right about that.
The team hasn't won a Stanley Cup since '93. They got there last year. But the Canadians have not been a team associated with winning for a young generation of fans and young players in the NHL. They're just been another team, but they're not just another team to the alumni, which I really don't understand why Marc Bergevin did that. It makes...
I have an answer, or two answers. One, he was afraid of leaks. And two, he was afraid of mixed messages. Like, I tell you, Alex Galchenyuk, you have to play this way. You, Alex Galchenyuk, you go talk to a member of the alumni who tells you have to play another way. Well, you're not going to end up playing my way, probably. So
why then did Marc Bergevin allow Alex Galchenyuk's father around outside telling him what he should do?
Well, at one point, that became a little bit of an issue, too. Now, I'll say this. Regarding the alumni, let's just say you and I played on the 93 team together, okay? I'm the captain. You're my goalie. You're the star. We won the Stanley Cup. You come out and you say you're very, very interested in the job. All right. I have closer ties to you than anybody else. I played with you. You were my teammate. We traveled together. We're in that locker room together. We battled together. We fought for a cup together. We fought for 2 cups together. We went to war together. Right. I'm going to back you more than anyone else out of loyalty. I feel like I have to. Now, maybe I'm also doing that because I believe you're the guy.
Yeah.
But guess what? If I don't believe you're the guy, I'm probably going to back you anyway. How do I not back my former teammate?
Yeah, I don't. With Guy Carbonneau,
I'm not saying he did that. I'm not saying he did that. I'm not saying he did that. But
Guy's a pretty much of a straight shooter, and I don't think he would push Patrick as hard as he has if he didn't believe that he could do the job.
Oh, I believe that he believes that he should be the guy. When he said, why not Patrick? You want someone who just pushes paper? And I said, no, well, Patrick's not going to push paper. Patrick's going to debate. And 100%, I believe in that. But here's the thing. If this team goes the way of a rebuild, which it looks like they're going to go, even if it's an accelerated rebuild of 2 years, but that's where they're going. If nobody hates losing more than Patrick Waugh, and Patrick Waugh wants to win right away, he's not a fit for a rebuild. Everybody knows that. Anyway.
No, and Patrick Waugh is wired. Patrick Waugh is wired for one thing, winning, right? And you're right. I mean, maybe they go through a rebuild. Things go really well. Whoever the new coach is, they said, you know what? We got a pretty good team now. Now we need somebody to come in here and light a fire under them and give them a kick in the butt. Maybe then Patrick Waugh is a candidate to be the next coach of the Canadiens. I'd be surprised, but it's not now in GM or coach.
As long as Jeff Molson owns the Montreal Canadiens, this is my prediction, Patrick Waugh will never be GM of the Montreal Canadiens. It's just a gut feeling on how one wants his organization to go and how the other would actually make it go. And I don't see it. I never did. And I told you from the beginning, no chance. On to the questions. Sharing is caring. Lucas Clark, in your opinion, does Marc Denis get a job somewhere in the organization? And before we get to that, I will say this. Guy Carbonneau, player development and going on the ice and working with some of the centermen on faceoffs, the two-way game, giving some advice, being somebody at Cole Caufield could probably ask something to or whatever. Guy brought that up last podcast, 100%. I would hire Guy Carbonneau to do that, work with the guys from a player development perspective any day. Now, Marc Denis.
The Canadiens also had the best power play in the NHL when Guy Carbonneau was head coach.
Yeah, that's true too. They also had Kovalev, who was one of the best power play players in the league back then. Marc Denis, does he get a job in the organization? Your opinion?
I don't think so, because I don't know what job apart from GM he might really want.
Or want more than doing
more than what he's doing at RDS, because
he's got a great job with RDS.
Yes, I mean, and I know Marc a little bit from being on the road. Super guy, smart guy, but he's got a job where he's watches the Canadiens, comments on the Canadiens. I'm sure he makes good money for it. Not a lot of pressure. People aren't second guessing him or whatever. He's part of the traveling party that travels on the team charters and everything like that. So he's got a nice job right now. And is he going to give that up to be a player a scout or a player development guy or a goalie coach or something like that? I'd be surprised.
I don't think so now, but I believe Marc Denis one day will work for the Montreal Canadiens. I believe that.
Unless Tony, if he really is, like maybe they did the interview for the GM and they said, well, you're not qualified yet, we don't think, but if maybe we'll offer you this job, which will be a step towards maybe being qualified.
Or you're the assistant GM and you're in charge of the Laval Rocket.
Yeah, well, that would be exactly. That would be a job. If that was the offer, I could see him taking that, because it's opening a door to him, if not being the next GM of the Canadiens, being a GM somewhere else. I mean, he's a name. He's known in Columbus. He's known around the NHL. He played briefly with the Canadiens, but he played more in other cities.
Man, I got amazing ideas. I should work for the Montreal Canadiens. All right. They never call me. I don't want to take the pay cut. Where are we going? Giancarlo Vignonia. What should be the new philosophy of the Canadiens? More of an attacking team? Faster? Stu, this could depend on whether it's Danny Briere or whether it's Matthew Darche.
Well, you know what my philosophy would be? Try and score some goals.
Did you see that
team that has not been able to score goals for so long?
Did you see that stat last night? I think somebody tweeted that the Florida Panthers have 50 goals in their last 8 games, and the Canadiens have like 76 or something like that the entire season.
And I brought this up many times, and it's a stat that just I can't get out of my head. The last Canadiens player to finish in the top 10 in NHL scoring was Mats Naslund in 1986. Points. That's like the New York Yankees not having a home run leader or RBI leader since 1986. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
How does a team like the Canadiens not have one player since 1986 who has been one of the leading, a top scorer and someone to go watch? I mean, the thing is,
3 reasons.
Well, one of the biggest criticisms I hear from fans and that about the Canadiens is just they're so boring to watch, and they've been boring to watch for a long time, apart from that unexpected run to the playoffs last season.
Yeah.
2 Saturdays ago, I watched the Colorado-Toronto game on Hockey Night in Canada. Oh, my God, what a hockey game. It was exciting. Last night, I watched the Leafs and the Blues. Again, exciting hockey game. Lots of goals, lots of star players on the ice, and then you watch the Canadians, and it's like, oh, my God, you're trying not to fall asleep or change the channel.
3 reasons. More pressure here than any other city. So when you go a couple of games, you don't score, you hear it, and you find it tough. Number 2, they haven't had a number 1 centerman since the mid-90s. And number 3, what was number 3 that I was thinking about? Hold on a second. I'm lost here. Number 1 was a lot of pressure here. Number 2 was they haven't had a number 1 centerman since the mid-90s. Number 3, I really believe that their system holds the players back a little bit. They're going to tell you that they play the same system as every other team in the National Hockey League. I'm not saying they don't, but I think they put more emphasis on the 200-foot game and all that stuff.
There's a lot of pressure in Toronto too, Tony, but they score goals there. That's a talent thing too, right? I mean, they just whether it's drafting or developing or the combination of both.
But Toronto went through a rebuild of a couple of seasons and drafted Matthews and Marner, which they chose not to do over here. And Toronto went out and gave an unrestricted free agent $11 million. The Canadians gave it to a goalie so we could watch his butterfly.
And the last player the Canadians had who took people out of their seats with excitement and anticipation when they had the puck was PK. And they got rid of him partly because that's what he did.
I hear you. And if we want to know how the goalie's feeling right now or what he's thinking, you have to read his wife's blog. All right, let's get to the questions. You like that one, eh? Paul Cormier, sad but true. Will Logan Mailloux be in a Hab jersey one day if the NHL can allow an Evander Kane chance after chance? I'm hoping Molson can give Logan a decent chance. If I had to guess, I would say yes, Logan Mailloux will play for the Canadians. But I wouldn't be shocked if he's moved, but I believe he will.
I'll go the other way because I think Jeff Molson wants to wash his hands of that entire episode.
But is that better? Then you're letting down a young man that you should be helping instead. When you drafted him, you talked about rehabilitating him.
You and I both know Jeff Molson has thin skin, and he did not like the criticism that came after drafting Logan Mailloux. It's shocking to me that he didn't anticipate the backlash that would happen after that pick. But for whatever reason, he didn't. Neither did Paul Wilson, which might be one of the reasons why Paul Wilson is no longer has the job that Chantal Maccabi now has. So I don't think they're going to give him away. But I wouldn't be surprised if Jeff Molson said to Jeff Gorton, I'm not telling you what to do, but if you can get something you think is a good return from Logan Mailloux, go for it.
Before someone says I'm okay with what he did, I maintained back then, I maintain now, and I will always maintain that what Logan Mailloux did was wrong. It was very, very wrong. As a matter of fact, it was pretty terrible. At the same time, when they drafted him, knowing what he did, yes, they didn't think it was going to take on these repercussions, but they vowed to help him. They vowed to put programs in place. They vowed to help rehabilitate him. They vowed to put him on the right track. And I think that if they get rid of him now, they're going back on their promise. And that's why I think they vowed to rehabilitate him and help him. They should.
But Tony, they said that 5 days after they drafted him.
Yeah.
And as I said, I'm still shocked that Jeff Molson and the Canadians weren't prepared for the backlash of drafting him. I'm also surprised that the night they drafted it in, they didn't announce all that stuff they announced it 5 days later. Why wasn't that the plan already? We're drafting this kid. We understand what he did, but
because they underestimated.
We're going to help him. We're going to help him off the ice and on the ice. That's why we're drafting him. We think we can help him, but they didn't. Like they drafted him, and it's like they didn't think anybody would be upset or anybody would care, which is shocking to me. And then 5 days later, when Molson came out with his statement, and then they had this thing that we're going to help them and do everything. But why wasn't that plan in place? I mean, it's not like they got to pick 20 the night of the draft, Tony, and said, you know what, maybe we'll take Logan Mailloux. They had meetings before the draft, and I'm sure it must have been brought up. If Logan Mailloux is available, are we going to take him? And they obviously said yes.
Yes.
So why was all that other stuff not in place the night they drafted him to come out and say all that stuff that took them 5 days afterwards to come out and say?
Because they underestimated the situation,
Exactly.
You know as well as I do. Back to the questions, because I've been told we have over 20 of them. Dan, so let's try and do rapid fire here. Dan Desjardins, who do you think stays and goes end of season, Tony or Stu? Your guess, of course. No one really knows. Lastly, Weber done or what? Weber is done. Yes, number one. Number two, Ben Sherratt will be traded this season. They'll try and get something for Mathieu Perreault. They'll try and get something for Cedric Paquette. And they're going to try to trade Jeff Petrie. And there will be others next season around trade deadline. They're going to try and trade Jonathan Drouin next season because his contract will be up. And I believe they're going to try and trade Carey Price, who I believe wants out. More questions. Next one is for Stu. Stu, this one's for you from Marco Monaco. The Oilers are expressing a lot of interest in Anderson. Is he someone to keep and rebuild around or give him up to get a prospect and a first-round pick, Stu?
If you can get a first-round pick, I think I would. I think right now a part of the rebuild is to try and accumulate as many first-round picks as you can moving forward. And Josh Anderson has injury issues. I'm not going to say he's injury prone, but there's injury issues there. And that would be a concern for me moving forward. So if you get a first-round pick and maybe something else, I would be all ears.
He still is at the right age, and there still are few players in the National Hockey League can play the way he does. I would keep him for still another couple of seasons. At the end of the day, you can't trade everybody. If we want to trade Hoffman and we want to trade Drouin and we want to trade Armia and we want to trade Sherratt and we want to trade Petrie and we want to trade Price, and at the end of the day, you're going to have to keep somebody. Okay, more questions. Stefan Vukovic. I'm a fan of Shane Wright like you are, but I'm hearing a lot of negative scouting reports on the kid. Is it because he's under heavy scrutiny because he might go to Montreal in the next draft? Or do you think Wright might be a bust? Do I think Wright will be a bust? No. Do I think he's a generational player? No. Do I think he's a franchise player? I'm not sure. Do I think he will end up being the number one centerman on the Montreal Canadiens one day if they draft him? Yes. Do I still believe he's going to go number one in the draft? Yes. Is this an amazing draft? No. That's it. Next. This one's for you, Stu, from George Liaros. What would be the first order of business for the new GM? I think Carey Price's situation needs to be resolved. Snowball effect. Stu?
Yeah, without a doubt. He's got, I'm sure, I would imagine that Jeff Gorton's already spoke with Carey Price. He has that no movement clause in his contract. I don't think Carey Price has any interest in being around for a rebuild. I think he wants a change of scenery, a fresh start. That knee surgery he had, it's 6 months ago now, and meniscus arthroscopic is not considered a major injury. So it's surprising that he's not further along already as far as getting close to playing. But before they can do anything, he has to come back and show he can play. I mean, if they're going to trade him, he's got to come back and show not only he can play, but that he can be close to the Carey Price that he was in the playoffs last season. There's the off-ice issues also, which had him in the NHLPA Player Assistance Program. So there's a lot of question marks surrounding Carey Price. But yeah, I think that has to be one of the first orders of priority for Jeff Gorton is what are we going to do with Carey Price? They're obviously going to have to eat half of that contract if they can try and move him. And can they even move him if they do that? And unless he comes back and shows he can play, nobody's going to take him right now when he hasn't even been on the ice.
More questions. On Brunchin with Marinaro, presented by Cherry River Hard Seltzer. We do this Sundays, usually at around 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Says Ralph Jr. Trotso, when do you think we'll get official announcement of the Habs GM?
I don't think it'll be Monday because they're playing. I'm off the top of my head, I'm trying to think what their schedule is for the rest of the week. I don't think they play Tuesday.
Okay, I'm digging it up right now as we speak here. I grab my smartphone. And all right, here we go. The Canadiens schedule. They will be in Arizona on Monday. They're in Dallas on Tuesday.
Yeah.
They're off on Wednesday. They will be in Vegas on Thursday, off on Friday, in Colorado on Saturday.
Yeah.
Then off on Sunday, in Minnesota on the 24th, and then they're off the 25th and the 26th, and they're scheduled to come back on the 27th. January 25th, Tuesday, January 25th, there will be a press conference where the Canadiens will announce their 25th general manager.
Or this Wednesday. I don't think they'll do it on a day when there's a game.
Yeah. So, and by the way, they might already have the general manager by then, but I think the press conference will be on January 25th. Tuesday, January 25th. That's when I think the press conference will be.
Well, the other question is, will it be a news conference or will it be a Zoom conference the way things are right now with COVID? It might just be a Zoom conference, which leads me to believe it could be Wednesday when they're on the road because it doesn't matter.
That's a good point. 100%. Marco Monaco, Gordon and Hughes would be fire, in my opinion. Genius move for these two to work together. 25th GM to bring the 25th cup. There you have it.
They obviously would work well together because they've worked well together in the past. And, as you mentioned, Tony, Jeff Molson said the new GM of the Canadiens will speak French. He didn't say it would be a Francophone Quebecer. And you wonder if maybe Jeff Molson, after all these years of losing and the disaster of this season, might be willing to put up with more heat for the decision, language-wise, than he would have been in the past.
And don't forget, by the way, maybe Danny Briere would accept a position as assistant GM in charge of the Laval Rocket, right? We brought that up for Marc Denis before and said, someone asked if Marc Denis would work for the Canadiens, and we said maybe in a position like that could be a position that could interest Daniel Briere as well.
And that makes sense because Gordon and the new GM are going to have so much work to do with the Canadiens.
Yes.
Delegate someone else to look after the Laval Rocket. They don't need to be worrying about that also.
Yeah, because Marc Bergevin, well, I know he was working with Larry Carey and the list goes on, but he was overseeing a lot of what was going on in the American Hockey League. All right, okay. Other questions coming in. Sharing is caring. Mike Garon. Nice pipes, Tony. Oh, thank you. With the possibility of a new coach, do you think that all assistant coaches will be replaced, Stu?
Probably. If they're keeping someone, I think it might be Luke Richardson because he's just so respected by the players and loved by the players. But they might just want to clean house. And if the Canadiens decide to let Luke Richardson go, he won't be unemployed long. There'll be a lot of other teams that will be interested in hiring him.
I wouldn't be surprised that a new coach comes in and a GM brings in his own coach. I wouldn't be surprised if the current staff is given an opportunity to do it again next year, and they'll say, bad year, short summer, some of the guys didn't even open their hockey bag, injuries, depleted roster, COVID, a season to forget. We'll give you another chance. Type of thing. I wouldn't be surprised. But it wouldn't.
The other thing with Luke Richardson, too, is that if he wants to be a head coach in the NHL, which I'm sure he does, it's not going to happen here, right? So,
and I know you think he will be, and I don't think he will. All right. More questions. Corey, Caufield would probably have 15 goals if he was playing in Boston. The hated Bruins develop every young player they have. The Habs are the opposite.
He would be better protected in Boston.
Yeah.
As I've mentioned, I think on your show before, Cole Caufield to me looks timid on the ice. He looks like a guy who's afraid to get hit. And I think that has to do with a lot of the issues he's having, problem scoring goals.
I don't think the Bruins would have him on a third line. Mind you, I think the Bruins would probably have him in the American Hockey League. Where are we going? Center Heiss. Would it be in the Habs' best interest to load up on first-round picks for the 2023 draft? Even this year's top draft has been questionable as of late. Of course it is. That's the draft of Connor Bedard and Mishkov. Of course it would be. Yes, good question. And
you can trade first-round picks this year for first-round picks next year, too.
That is correct. You can do that as well. Having said that, will they be in their own building in the month of July, have a first-round pick, and trade it? Not if it's a low pick.
Yeah.
Not if it's a low pick. I don't think so. All right. More questions. Curtis Alt. Apparently, the Rangers are interested in Lehkonen. Do you trade him, and what do you expect in return? I don't trade him because at $2.4 million, you can digest the salary. There are other players that you should be trading before Lehkonen. First of all, look, nobody's untouchable on this team. But Lehkonen's not the first one you want to trade, and I don't think Lehkonen gets you a first-round pick or a top-end prospect. So for those reasons, I don't.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Lehkonen is a valuable player. He works his butt off every time he's on the ice, which you can't say about a lot of the guys in this team right now. He kills penalties. Yeah. The only thing he doesn't do well is he doesn't finish the scoring chances he has. But he's a valuable. I don't think you're going to get much for him. So I would rather just keep him.
Stu, next one's for you. Anthony Polich. Hey guys. Do you see any chance Jeff Gordon makes a big trade for number one center instead of waiting for a drafted center? Stu?
Possible. The other Gordon connection here too is Patrice Bergeron was his longtime client who was a free agent
UFA at the end of the year. Yeah.
And if you want to bring in a guy, number one center right away and a pretty good leader, probably your next captain of the Canadiens and a guy who at this point in his career might be willing to go through a rebuild to come and play at home with
2-year deal. 2-year deal.
And that's another thing you got to factor in there. I mean, there's guys at the end of their career, Patrice Bergeron might, maybe he wants to come back and play in the Canadiens, and you got to figure if he does, they put the C on his sweater, and there's not a bad way to start a rebuild, and you're not giving up anything to get him.
It actually would hurt the rebuild. Because now
I don't think so, Tony. I don't think so because, Nick Suzuki talks about how he wants to be like Patrice Bergeron.
Yeah.
Well, what better way to learn to play like Patrice Bergeron than being with Patrice Bergeron every single day on the ice?
I understand that. I was just referring to you end up probably winning more games because you end up being a better team, right? So
yeah, but that losing. The thing is, they're not even trying now, and that's bad. Like that creates a really bad culture around the locker room. And, young guys looking at older guys not trying. It's like, why should I? There's a couple of wingers that it's very evident that they're not trying. Yeah. So that's why I think bringing Patrice Bergeron here to end his career would be a brilliant move, I think.
Let's not forget, Gordon is the guy who acquired Zibanejad and Strome, the Rangers' number one and number two centerman in a trade. So I don't think he'd do it right away if he would go out and make a trade, but he has an ability to pull off pretty good trades and get pretty good centermen in return. More questions?
Yeah, and also Bergeron, if he was to come here, it takes some pressure off Suzuki as far as the matchups he's playing with, and it would allow him to. Nick Suzuki, to me, is not ready to be a number one center right now in the NHL. No. A couple of years with a tutor like Bergeron, and then I think you'd be much, much more prepared to go into that role just as this rebuild, if it is successful, is starting to roll.
Where are we going here? Let's go to Kurt. Do you think if Price is healthy and ready to go that they could get Leon Draisaitl for him? No.
No.
Absolutely not.
I don't know. I don't think they're going to get much for Carey Price, apart from salary cap relief.
If they can get rid of his contract, they're a winner in the trade. Yeah. Come on. He's going to be 35 in August. He's had a series of injuries. The law of physics. He's a declining asset. He won't be able to play more than 50 games in a season going forward. Come on. Leon Draisaitl is one of the top 5 players in the league. Some has him at number 2, number 3. Let's be honest here. Pierre Beaubien. Do you think Caufield will play the rest of the season with the Habs or be sent down? Peter from La Prairie. Peter, I believe that the reason why Caufield is here is at one point there were like 24 players out of 48 that were on the COVID protocol. If the numbers are here, the players are back, the players are healthy, they'll send Caufield down. Next one's for you, Stu. Robert Allen Ford. Do you think picking up Clegg and Pitlick was a genuine, I like this guy move, or are they just roster fillers so they can offload current Habs for picks? before the deadline and still have a team to ice? I think it's a little bit of both, to tell you the truth. I think they look at them and say they both can skate. They're both relatively young. They're inexpensive. They haven't reached their ceiling yet. Maybe there's something we can do with these guys. But they also allow us an opportunity to keep them here and send other players to Laval. So I think it's a little bit of both. Stu, the next one goes for you. Scorpio Sting. Has Carey Price played his last game with the Canadiens? His silence is fueling speculation. Stu?
I don't think so, because I don't think they can trade him unless he proves he can play. And he'd have to come back and play, 10 games, 12 games or something to prove that his knee's okay, his head's okay, he can still. And, you mentioned like last season, the last 3 regular seasons, Carey Price has not been good. He's been very inconsistent. He was fantastic in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But as you said, and, when Stefan Waite got fired, he mentioned that, Price's body is banged up. He can't play 3 games in a row, or he can't play. He's a guy who, as you said, Tony, he can play maybe 50 games a year now.
Yeah. Okay, let's get back to the questions. We're going to try and do rapid fire here. Guillaume Plouffe Jalbert. What moves could the team make to have a real first-line players to play with Suzuki? Stu, I don't think they make any of that first-line players play with Suzuki right now. I think they're going to go the way of a 2-year rebuild.
Yep.
Next one goes for you.
Get as many first-round picks as you can.
Ryan Katz. Hi, Tony. Does the new GM conduct the rebuild if it has problems unloading those long-term contracts? Stu?
It'll make it more difficult. But, you look back at Toronto, when Toronto, Lou Lamoriello came in, and they had Dion Phaneuf, who had a contract that everybody thought was untradeable, and they traded it. There's a will, there's a way, as they say, right? So it'll make it more difficult. But to me, the most difficult contract to move is going to be Carey Price, just because of his health situation.
Yeah.
But like if it's Brendan Gallagher or if it's Jeff Petrie or the other guys, I think there's ways to make it work.
Rod Tadlock, if going into a full rebuild, how concerned should the new general manager be with signing Harris and Farrell? Of course, they're concerned. Of course, they want to get them under contract, and there would be nobody better to get Jordan Harris under contract than Kent Hughes, who knows Jordan Harris, and his 2 sons play on the same team as Jordan Harris at Northeastern. Stu, the next one is for you. Doug Marsland. Do you think there's any chance Price goes to Colorado, Stu?
Yes, if he comes back and shows he can play and play well, and if Colorado can fit half. Yes, so.
Stu, you're cutting out a little bit there. We'll see. We got you back. Okay. Listen, Colorado's getting good goaltending as of late. That's a little bit of an issue, but the goaltending is a little bit up and down. If Price shows that he still has it, even for the short term, Colorado would definitely be one of those teams that I think could be interested, but I think Edmonton would need him more. Mr. Jwanarek, I believe, says Briere should be disqualified from the job for not coming to Montreal during his prime. Stu?
No, not at all. I mean, that's a personal decision. I'm sure with
family
his family
decision.
and his kids and everything else, didn't want the scrutiny of playing in Montreal. I don't think that has anything to do with, or shouldn't have anything to do with whether they hire him or not.
I know a lot of people hold that against them, but there are times in our professional careers where we wouldn't make a move to another city or take another job. And on another occasion, years later, we would.
Family
and you know
situation.
How Danny Briere could spin this? Danny Briere could say, I took a family decision at the time.
Yep.
I was a little bit scared of going to Montreal at the time.
Yep.
I went later on in my career, and I so enjoyed it that it's then that I realized I should have made the move before. That's how you can spin it. And that's an answer coming from a brilliant guy.
I'll never criticize any father for making a decision that he thinks is best for his family. That's
Michael Foresta. Well said, Stu. Do you guys believe Wright is a franchise player? He's not a generational player. If he becomes a Ryan O'Reilly, do you believe Ryan O'Reilly is a franchise player? If you do, then the answer is yes. If you don't, then the answer is no, because that's the player that I think he'll probably become, or that's a player that he is being compared to. Him, Patrice Bergeron. But I think it'll be tough for him to be a Patrice Bergeron, because Patrice Bergeron is pretty special. AG, this one's for you, Stu. Will one of the candidates end up running the Laval Rocket?
No, as I mentioned, they should delegate the Laval Rocket to somebody else, so that the GM and the assistant GM here, or at least, so that Gordon and the GM here are focused solely on what's happening with the Canadians. I mean, obviously, they're going to want to know what's going on in Laval, but you got to delegate that to somebody else and have that.
So maybe it could be somebody that they interviewed will get the job with the Rocket. Yeah. All right, more questions. Cal B, do you think the Habs will ever play entertaining hockey ever again? Yes. I think that under Gordon and the new GM, the Canadians will play more entertaining hockey than they have in the last 8 or 9 years. And why? Because they got to get that fan base reinvigorated. They got to sell those tickets, and they know what people are asking for. Stu, I've been told it's the last question, and I'll leave it to you. We have so many more, but, we've got an hour, and there's NFL football coming up in 30 minutes. Kyle Whiteman, Tony and Stu, considering Guy Lafleur's current health battle with cancer, would you guys petition Molson and the Habs to rename their Molson Cup the Guy Lafleur Cup to make it a relevant award and a way to honor this beloved legend?
I wouldn't petition Molson because it's his team. He can do what he wants, but boy, that's a pretty good idea. That would be a sweet idea. Could you imagine the ovation well, again, there's no fans at the Bell Center, but if we get fans back at the Bell Center before the end of the year and they announce the Molson Cup winner for that month and they bring out Guy Lafleur and say it's now the Guy Lafleur, they'd probably still keep it the Guy Lafleur Molson Cup or whatever. Can you imagine the emotion? And, I watched that video that Guy did for Chantal McAbee and I had tears in my eyes. It was like, it just showed you how much respect he has for her. And as Chantal said, the only reason she got into sports media was because of Guy Lafleur. And it just shows you what kind of a man Guy Lafleur is to do that video while he was obviously not in the best of health. He's lost his hair from the chemotherapy.
Yeah.
But that was, yes. I'm not going to petition Jeff Molson to do that. But if I was Jeff Molson, there was something I would definitely be thinking about doing.
Stu, I've said this before. My first memory was Lafleur tying it up versus the Bruins in '79. And even though I saw him in his years in Montreal, which were not his better years, he was still my favorite player. Coming down that right wing with that hair flowing and that big shot that he had. I love Guy Lafleur as a player. I love Guy Lafleur as a person. For Christmas, I said I should have a Guy Lafleur jersey, and I contacted the people over at Tricolor. And I said, if there's anyone who's able to find it for me, it's them. And they found it. And they shipped it for me, and I got it during the holidays, and I put it up there on social media, and the Flower got word that I had his jersey and said, I need to sign that jersey. And so his friend and advisor, Donnie Cape, got a hold of me and said, get me the jersey. I got Donnie the jersey. Flower signed it. A couple of days later, I got it back, and when I went to pick it up, he wanted to say hi to me. So he was on the phone. And I told him how much he meant and he means to me. And I told him to fight. And he was having a hard time talking, but he wanted to talk. And he promised me that he wouldn't give up. And I'll never forget that conversation I had with the Flower. I'm going to remember that one for a very, very long time. And I hope, Guy, you're going to be with us. You're 70 years old. I hope you're going to be with us for another 30 years. As they say in Italian, cent'anni, 100 years. Eh?
Well, Tony...
Yeah.
As Chantal, when I spoke with Chantal after she got the job, and she gave me the perfect description of Guy Lafleur. She said he's the perfect imperfect hero. And I thought, amazing. What a perfect description of Guy Lafleur. He's the perfect imperfect hero. He has faults like all of us do, but he's genuine, Tony. He's a genuine guy. If you have time, I'll tell you 2 very quick Guy Lafleur stories.
Of course I got time for Guy Lafleur.
First one, a buddy of mine works for CN, and they played one of those charity games against the Canadians old timers. Yeah. And Guy Lafleur was playing on the team, and my son at the time was maybe 4 years old and loved Guy Lafleur. And so we had a little Guy Lafleur McFarlane figure or whatever. And after the game, I told my son, well, we'll see if maybe you can get Lafleur's autograph. So we're waiting outside in the lobby. I think it was the John Bellevue Arena. And we're waiting 20 minutes and 30 minutes, and they're not coming out. So I said to my son, come on. We'll go, no, I want to see Guy Lafleur. So we waited, and the crowd sort of thinned out. And then Guy Lafleur finally came out, and I went up to said, excuse me, Guy, I'm sorry to bother you, but would you mind my son, So not only did he sign it, he took a picture with him, and then the crowd started coming, and I'm thinking to myself, he probably thought in the back of his mind, I'm almost out of here. I'm almost going to make a clean escape and get out of here. And then he stood there and signed autographs for 40 minutes. And that's That's Guy Lafleur. The other story is I showed up to cover the Guy Lafleur Awards one year at the Mise au Jeu restaurant where they give out the Scholastic Awards, the Guy Lafleur Awards. And I got there early, and Guy's sitting there by himself at the front. Looks like $1 million. Looks like a movie star. Right? He's got the tan. He's got the suit. He's got everything. I went up there and I said, Guy, you look freaking fun. You look great, man. What's where did you get the tan? Where'd you get the tan? You must have been playing golf. I hate golf. So, well, how'd you get the tan? Painting my house.
That's a good one.
To me, that's Guy Lafleur, right?
Years back, someone reached out to Guy Lafleur and said that, she said her dad was terminally ill, and Guy Lafleur was his idol, and she wishes his dad could have met Guy Lafleur and spent some time with him, but unfortunately, he's just too weak to move around. And Lafleur said, "Where do you live?" And he found out where they live, and he said, "I'll come to you." And they said, "No, that's too far. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Let's just find a place where I can land the helicopter." And he got in the helicopter, and it was over an hour, 15, hour 20, something like that. Landed the helicopter, sat down with the gentleman and the family, took pictures, signed autographs, stayed over an hour, and then got back in the helicopter and went home. There's only one flower.
If Jean Beliveau was the perfect hero and Guy Lafleur was the imperfect perfect hero, what a pair, right? We were so fortunate in this city to have both of them. And you and I in our positions were very fortunate to get to know these guys a little bit. And God, what a pair. They don't make like that anymore, Tony.
No, they really don't. Guy, we love you. Keep fighting, bud. You're Le Démon Blanc. You're Guy Lafleur. It's a sick podcast. Have a great Sunday, everyone. Everyone give this video a thumbs up. Always fun and always sick with Tony and Stu, says Dan Desjardins. Thank you, Dan. To you and everyone else watching, we thank you for the support. It's Brunchin with Marinaro. He's Stu Cowan. It's presented by Cherry River. Follow us on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's absolutely free. It's a sick podcast. The podcast is sick. We'll see you again in a couple of days. Cheers.
See you, Tony.
See you, Stu. Have a great Sunday.